All right, today we're diving into something that, let's be honest, affects every single one of us at work. How do we move past just talking about diversity and actually start building a workplace where everyone feels they belong? Let's get into it.
Now let's start with a big, bold fact. This isn't some future prediction. This is happening right now. You are part of the most diverse workforce in history. That means the person on your team, in your next meeting, they probably have a really different background and way of seeing the world than you do. So the real question isn't if this is happening, it's what do we do about it? How do we make this an actual strength?
And that's because, well, this is the payoff right here. This isn't just a fluffy, feel-good idea, it's a real competitive advantage. The data's super clear on this. Diverse teams can lead to better performance, more innovation, and frankly, a more interesting place to work. But, and this is a big but, you don't just get those benefits automatically. It all starts with understanding ourselves.
So if we want to build an inclusive place for everyone else, we've got to start by looking in the mirror. We have to understand our own professional identity first. Who are you when you log on for the day? It's probably more complex than you think.
Okay, so check this out. You can think of your professional identity as having three main ingredients. You've got origin, that's the stuff you're born with, like your race or nationality. Then there's growth. That's everything you've picked up along the way, your skills, your education, your life experiences. And finally, aspiration. That's all about where you're headed, the kind of leader you want to be. Your identity is this unique mix of all three. And the thing is, this mix is always changing, always evolving.
Which brings us to really the holy grail here, authenticity. An inclusive workplace is one where people don't feel like they have to hide parts of that identity mix. You know, it's the exact opposite of that feeling that you have to code switch, where you change how you talk or act just to fit in. It's about feeling like you truly belong.
Okay, so if authenticity is the goal, why is it so hard sometimes? What's getting in the way? Well, it turns out there are these invisible barriers. You can't always see them, but you can definitely feel them. Let's take a look at what they are.
First up, you've got stereotypes. These are the mental shortcuts our brains love to take. And you know, we usually think of negative stereotypes, but even so-called positive ones can be harmful, like assuming someone is great at math just because of their ethnic background. Why is that a problem? Because it puts people in a box and completely ignores who they are as an individual. And those stereotypes, they can lead to this next thing, othering. This is that us versus them vibe. It's when someone's differences are pointed out, either subtly or not so subtly, and it just pushes them to the outside, making them feel like they're not really part of the core team.
And then you have stigma. This is a really heavy one. It attaches a sense of shame to a part of someone's identity. Maybe it's related to mental health, a disability, whatever it is. It pushes people into silence, and that makes it almost impossible for someone to be their true, authentic self at work.
And you know what powers all of this stuff? Unconscious bias. Our brains are basically wired to take these shortcuts. Take affinity bias. That's just our brain's lazy way of liking people who are, well, like us. It doesn't mean you're a bad person, it's just a mental shortcut. But the impact is that we can totally miss out on amazing, talented people just because they're different. And just seeing these patterns is the first step to fighting them.
All right, so we've talked about what's going on inside our heads. But what does this diversity actually look like out in the real world? The sheer scale of it might just blow you away.
I mean, just take a look at this. We are literally at a point in history where you can have 5 different generations working together, from traditionalists all the way to Gen Z. You see how huge those bars for millennials and Gen X are? That is a massive range of life experiences, tech savviness, and communication styles all crammed into one project team.
And we're seeing the exact same kind of shift when it comes to race and ethnicity. Just follow those lines out to 2060. You see that clear downward trend for the white, non-Hispanic population and the upward climb for pretty much every other group. The takeaway is simple. Our workplaces are only going to get more multicultural.
Diversity also pops up in something as basic as how we talk. This table shows some fascinating patterns in how we communicate, which often start way back when we're kids. For example, a style that involves asking more questions is amazing for getting more info on the table, but it runs the risk of making someone seem less confident. Now, here's the thing. Neither of these is right or wrong. The point is just to be aware that these different styles exist and how they might be perceived by others.
And honestly, we're just scratching the surface here. We're also talking about sexual orientation, religion, neurodiversity, where you grew up. The list just goes on. The big idea here is that diversity isn't this simple, one-dimensional thing. It's this incredibly rich, complex tapestry of human experience. And real inclusion means making room for all of it.
Okay, deep breath. We've covered a lot. We've looked at our own identities, the invisible barriers, the whole spectrum of diversity. So now for the million-dollar question. What do we do? How do we actually put all this into practice?
This is where it gets really practical. The sources give us 4 simple but super powerful steps we can all take. First, just assume people have good intentions. Seriously, most people aren't trying to be exclusionary. Second, get curious. Learn about other people's experiences. Third, use the language people want you to use. It's that simple. And finally, look for what you have in common while also respecting what makes you different.
Now, building on that, if you're a leader or a manager, you have a special responsibility here. Creating this kind of culture isn't a passive thing you can just hope for. It means you have to actively create a space where everyone, and I mean everyone, feels safe enough to speak their mind.
So for all the managers listening, these tips are gold. Don't just wait for people to give you feedback, go ask for it. Break those giant, intimidating meetings into smaller groups. And I really want to zero in on that last one. Reward the people who disagree with you, the contrarians. Why? Because those are the folks who save you from the echo chamber of groupthink. They're an absolute asset.
So that brings us to the end, and we want to leave you with a challenge, a question to chew on. Because at the end of the day, creating a truly inclusive workplace isn't about some massive top-down initiative. It's not about grand gestures. It's about the small, everyday choices and actions, the little things you and I do. It starts with getting curious. So, what's your one thing going to be?